Good evening.
Good evening.
Again, it is good to see each of you here, and what a blessing it is that we are able to gather together and worship once again our great God on such a beautiful day in which we can sing such wonderful songs as Paul led us in, to be led in such wonderful prayers, Mark, as we worship Him who is great above all, our everlasting God, our Almighty King. And as we continue here on Sunday evenings looking at the last of our lessons in the theme of God by name, where we've been looking at those Old Testament names of God or characteristics given to Him in name. And as I went back and looked at it, up to this point we have covered 15. This will be the 16th name for God found in the Old Testament. Last week we discussed Yahweh Shema, or the Lord is there, from Ezekiel chapter 48 and verse 35. And we pointed to the fact and the blessings there are in the church today because God is there, as that prophecy prophesied concerning God and His relationship with the church. He is here, isn't He? He is always there in the church, looking to bless and challenge, and as we look at tonight, even perform justice where necessary and judgment when needed. Which brings us to our lesson tonight, and it's found in Exodus chapter 34 and verse 14, dealing with the Hebrew word Qanna. The Hebrew word Qanna. As we've been looking at, typically Yahweh has been tied to these names, but in this particular case, it isn't so, and we'll see it there in Exodus 34:14. For you shall worship no other God, we read, for the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God. Here, God very distinctly calls and executes upon His name that which He wants to be declared. His name is jealous. This Hebrew word Qanna. As we look at it and scour the Old Testament, if you will, for that word, we find it actually 5 other times, and every single time it is in connection to our God. We see it, for example, in Deuteronomy chapter 4 and verse 24. For the Lord your God is a consuming fire, a jealous God. We see it again there in Exodus chapter 20 and verse 5. You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the 3rd and 4th generation of those who hate me. Over and over and over. In fact, as I said, this word Qanna 6 different times in the Old Testament in 5 different verses. We see this word used to describe our God, even naming Himself as such, the name Qanna, or jealous. It's with this in mind, I want us to look at that and then examine that, get to know, as we've been doing through these lessons, who our God is in light of this information. So if you have your handout, let's go ahead and look at our first point this evening. And that is the word jealousy. What exactly does that mean? And isn't this a bad thing to be? You know, from a little kid, we're taught we ought not be jealous of others, shouldn't we? As parents, we teach our kids jealousy is a bad thing. It's something we shouldn't be involved in. And there is no doubt that as we talk about it as parents and as kids and as adults in our life, we understand there is a negative character trait concerning this word, jealousy. In fact, the word jealousy actually comes, if you look at its etymology or the study of the word, it actually comes from the late Latin zealous, which means to have great zeal. And when it's looked at in a negative light, when this word jealous is found in its negative sense, it literally means to have a hostile attitude or zeal towards a rival, or one believed to enjoy an advantage that you don't have. Hence why we tell our children and say things like, listen, don't be jealous, don't look at what others have and be jealous over what they have, that advantage. Don't have a hostility towards that. And throughout the Scriptures, we see this being demonstrated and told to us, don't we? In Job chapter 5 and verse 2, we read this: "Surely vexation kills the fool, and jealousy slays the simple." We go further in the book of Proverbs there in chapter 14 and verse 30. Solomon would write, "A tranquil heart gives life to the flesh, but envy or jealousy makes the bones rot." This hostility towards those who would have an advantage, this great zeal towards an enemy, if you will, or someone who has more than what we have, that's jealousy, it's envy. In Acts 13:45, we find the word again. "But when the Jews saw the crowds, they were filled with jealousy and began to contradict what was spoken by Paul, reviling him." They saw Paul had these great crowds, and they were jealous of them. The advantage he had, speaking truth in this sense, they were upset. They had a hostile zeal against him because of either an advantage or a perceived advantage. They have this feeling, if you will. In 2 Corinthians chapter 12 and verse 20, Paul, inspired by God, would write this: "For I fear that perhaps when I come, I may find you not as I wish, that you may find me not as you wish, that perhaps there may be quarreling, jealousy, anger, hostility, slander, gossip, conceit, and disorder." Here we see it in a list of things that Paul was hoping he wouldn't find, but was afraid he would find there in Corinth. Jealousy and envy, a strife. James in James chapter 3 and verse 16 would declare this: "For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there will be disorder in every vile practice." In other words, when we look at this, jealousy, when it's in its negative connotation, is very bad. It's sinful. It's wrong. It's something we as God's children in particular should never be involved with, and no one should. Jealousy and envy should not be a part of our character traits. It should not be a part of anything we are involved in. We must guard against this feeling, this attitude, this character, this hostility towards anyone who has an advantage or a perceived advantage to us. But with that being said, there is also a sense in which we find this word, jealousy, used in a righteous way. Used in a way that is not sinful and is not wrong. Paul, in fact, makes this very clear, that there is a sense in which you can be jealous and it not be wrong. In fact, in 2 Corinthians again, chapter 11, verse 2, we read this: "For I feel a divine jealousy for you, since I betroth you to one husband to present you as a pure virgin to Christ." Here Paul talks about a jealousy that is not sinful. It is, in fact, a divine jealousy. This is the jealousy that God is talking about concerning Himself. Not that of sinfulness that we must be wary of and aware of, that would make our God actually jealous. But we need to understand what this is. So in one sense, jealousy is wrong, in the sense where we see someone who has things we want or has an advantage over what we might desire, and we want that, and we have hostility towards others in desiring that and wanting to be a part of that. On the other hand, there's also this divine jealousy. And I want us, especially in light of God calling Himself that, I want us to take a moment and look at that, to see exactly what's being said there. Listen, you and I must understand we should never have this hostility towards anyone. We ought to be content with what we have. As the Hebrew writer said in 13:5, "Keep your life free from the love of money and be content with what you have, for He has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you." But on the other hand, this divine jealousy is something we need to look into, because it is directly tied to the name of God given in Exodus chapter 34 in verse 14. This Hebrew word Qanna, or jealous. So what is exactly divine jealousy? What was Paul talking about? What is God describing himself as? What exactly is divine jealousy? Divine jealousy is actually based in idolatry. It sounds strange to think of, but these two terms are linked completely. What do I mean divine jealousy is based on idolatry? What does that mean? Again, if we were to go back and look at each instance of this word, this Hebrew word Qanna, we would see that every single time where it says, my name is jealous, or I am a jealous God, every single time it is in connection with God talking to his people about not following after idols. To illustrate a few more, look at Deuteronomy 4:23 through 24. Take care lest you forget the covenant of the Lord your God, which he made with you, and make a carved image, the form of anything that the Lord your God has forbidden you. For the Lord your God is a consuming fire, a jealous God. Again in Deuteronomy 5:9, you should not bow down to them or serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the father and the children, third and fourth generations to those who hate me. Deuteronomy 6:14 and 15. You shall not go after other gods, the gods of the people who are around you, for the Lord your God in the midst is a jealous God, lest the anger of the Lord your God be kindled against you, and he destroy you from off the face of the earth. Again, as we look at this word and how God uses it, we see that this word, divine jealousy, is tightly entwined and connected with idolatry. In fact, to understand what God is dealing with and what he's saying, calling himself jealous, saying he's a jealous God, we have to understand this aspect of idolatry. Qanna, or jealous God, is to inform everyone that God will not allow or accept his honor being given to anyone else. The God whom you and I are here to serve this evening. The God whom we sang praises to, whom we were led in prayer in, the God whom we are studying tonight, he is a God who will not allow, is not okay with in any form or fashion, the honor that is due him given to someone else. The loyalty that is due him given to someone or something else. In Isaiah 42 and verse 8 we read this, I am the Lord, that is my name. My glory I give to no other, nor my praise to carved idols. When God describes himself as a jealous God, when God names himself jealous, it's in connection with this idea of idolatry. In other words, nothing deserves our loyalty more than him. There's nothing we should be more loyal to, as we talked about this morning, in any aspect of our lives than our God. Not our family, not our friends, not our co-workers or anyone else. I am the Lord, he said, that is my name. My glory I give to no other. Again in Isaiah, just a few chapters over, in chapter 48 and verse 11. For my own sake, I do it. For how should my name be profaned? My glory I will not give to another. Now I can safely say, without any worry, that I'm not worried about anyone here worshiping an image they carved out, that they whittled with their knife, or through metalwork. We have a lot of very talented people here, but I'm not worried about us bowing the knee before something we have made or something we bought in the marketplace that others might actually worship. On the other hand, that doesn't mean we can't invoke the jealousy of God even today. Not necessarily in the worship of graven images or carved out images. But as Paul declared in Colossians 3 and verse 5, through covetousness. Put to death, therefore, what is earthly in you, sexual immorality or fornication, impurity, passion, evil desire, and covetousness, notice this, which is idolatry. When we think about our walk with God, when we think about our life with God, Qanna, or jealous, as the name of God, doesn't just apply or for those under the Old Testament who might find themselves worshiping an image that man has created. The creation, in other words, over the Creator. No. We can find ourselves, if we hold to this word, covetousness, invoking the jealousy of God. Now, this word covetousness literally means a desire to have more. If you were to break out the compound word, it means to desire more. It's in line with the idea of greediness, never being satisfied with what you have. In fact, Jesus would describe this mentality in Luke chapter 12 and verse 15 when he said this, "Take care and be on your guard against all covetousness." There's our word, as in Colossians 3:5. "For one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." In other words, don't be desiring more and more and more. Be content with what you have. Warren Buffett was once asked, a man who has more money than, as Garth Brooks would say, of his own wealth than my grandkids could spend, was asked one time by a reporter or someone close to him, do you have enough money? His answer was, there's never enough money. This is this idea, this collection of abundance of possessions, putting our loyalty in the things of the material world rather than God in the spiritual world. When one goes down this path and they seek the abundance of possessions, they create in their life an idol. And they invoke the jealousy of God. For God is a jealous God against anyone who would give the loyalty he should have, as we talked about this morning, the honor that he should have in respect to anyone or anything else. He has not given it away and does not wish to. When we give this loyalty away after an abundance of possessions, instead of being content with what we have, we invoke divine jealousy against us. A jealousy that understands who the one true God is. It's during these times in one's life that they are at most danger. Look at what Nahum says there in Nahum 1:2 about invoking the jealousy of God. The Lord is a jealous and avenging God. The Lord is avenging and wrathful. The Lord takes vengeance on his adversaries and keeps wrath for his enemies. As we've talked about in the book of Romans there, in Romans chapter 8, when we seek idolatry and put our loyalties and honor and respect to those things that are outside of God, in other words, we don't put him first in our lives, we become his enemy. And his wrath is that for which stands in a way. A hostile zeal or jealousy, towards someone we know who has an advantage, that we can't do, that we can't be a part of. But we also have to be just as careful that we don't invoke that divine jealousy of God and the wrath that comes with it. As we reflect upon our lives and we reflect upon the things in which we got going on, let us make certain that we know who Qanna is. He is a jealous God. But thanks be to God that we don't have to actually be involved or see that part of God. We can live a life here on earth through the blood of Christ and His sacrifice and the hope He's created. We can live a life free from that. As again, Romans chapter 8 verse 1 says, free of that guilty judgment. But it's only if we don't invoke that jealousy, that divine jealousy of our divine God. So this evening, as you reflect upon that, I pray that that's not the case, that you have not invoked that, and if it is the case, make that right, make the change. Look towards that which is needed and obey, repent, confess, and be forgiven. But if it is the case this evening that you need our prayers to help you in bearing that burden, let us know. If it is the case that we can, as a family, wrap our arms around you and help you in that, let us do so. And let us help you endure to the end, that we may all one day be in heaven singing the praises of God. So this evening, if there's someone here who needs the prayers of this congregation, let us know by coming forward as we stand and as we sing.